Yeah, I think you're probably right about that, Mike. This came as a surprise to the entire organization. This was something that Ryne Sandberg said that he's been thinking about personally for, I think he said, a week to 10 days at this point. He told his coaching staff this afternoon after he had made the announcement that he woke up this morning and made the decision that he was going to resign. And so, yeah, I think everybody here is still trying to absorb it, that players and coaches, broadcasters alike. So it's a little bit of a shock. And I just heard your comments right before I came on, and there might be something to that Rhino just said. And he alluded to the fact that he wanted to make this decision on his own terms, and that's what he did.
Yeah, and I know, in part of your job, Murph, you deal with a lot of these guys on a day-to-day basis. You talk to them in the good times and in the bad times. And, Ryan didn't seem like he was in love with talking to the media. It's not something he felt very comfortable with at times. But how would you describe Sandberg and just kind of his relationship with this team? It seems from the outside looking in that there's just a lot of disconnect. And is that just because of his personality? Are we reading that the wrong way?
Well, here's what I can say, and you have to keep in mind that I am not in the clubhouse on an hourly basis. My activity in the clubhouse is limited mostly to the times that it's public as well. Now, I am with the team on the road, on airplanes, and on buses, and here's what I can say from a personal standpoint. I got to know Ryne Sandberg 2.5 years ago when he came up as a coach. I have had what I think has been a very positive working relationship with him. I've interviewed him hundreds of times, and I've enjoyed being around Ryne Sandberg, not only to listen to him tell the stories of back when he was a player, but to watch him kind of do his thing as a manager as well. Are there questions about his ability to communicate with his players? And sure, I mean, they're out there, they're public. Some players have said that they wished he had been a little bit more communicative sometimes. But everybody has their way of doing things, and at the end of the day, I really believe that all Ryne Sandberg was asking of his players was to go out there and try to play the game every single night the right way and do the right things and move runners over and get sack flies when you need them and have good approaches at the plate. And unfortunately, when a team is losing, everything else becomes so magnified. I really believe that this team was winning, or winning more often than they do, that a lot of the issues that people, tend to point at probably wouldn't have been as glaring. And, every manager has a different style, and Ryne's was his style. And, ultimately the players are responsible for what happens on the field, and I think that's where the breakdown happened. And losing kind of makes it difficult for everybody, and they've done a lot of losing over the last couple of years, and I think that made it hard for all of us. Yeah, I mean, do you get a sense about Ryan that maybe this just isn't what he thought? Because he was asked, does he want to manage again, and he said, I haven't really thought about that. I mean, did you get a sense that the profession, he soured on just that job, and not necessarily Phillies manager, but just position of manager of a baseball team in general? Well, that's a great question. And he was actually asked almost that identical question today during his press conference. He was asked if being the manager of a major league team was more difficult than he expected. And his answer I thought was interesting. He said he was asked actually if being a manager was more difficult than he thought. And he said being the manager of a major league baseball team was more challenging than maybe he anticipated. But he said, I loved the challenge, and I loved waking up every morning trying to put together a lineup that day that was going to win a baseball game. And, I think it maybe was a little bit different than his experience down in the minor leagues when, guys are coming up and maybe, I don't want to say a little bit more eager to listen to their manager, but, just the dynamic of a manager and players in the minor league, I think, was probably different than a manager in the big leagues with big league players. So, whether or not he soured on the profession, I don't know. I mean, this is a guy that paid his dues to get back to the Hall of Famer that paid his dues to get back to the big leagues to manage. I think it's what he wanted to do. Obviously, the results weren't what he was hoping for. But would I be shocked if he decided to manage again? No, I wouldn't be shocked by that. But I think I'd be very shocked if it happened very soon. I think he thinks he needs some time at this point. But we might hear of Ryne Sandberg, back on the bench at some point down the road.
Gregg Murphy, Comcast Sportsnet. Do you think he was put in a tough spot? You mentioned it in the minors. You got young guys. You're playing the young guys. You come into a situation where you have these veterans that are still kind of hanging around from the old regime, but you're in a rebuilding mode, but you can't sit those guys. You want to see new guys, but you can't bench them. Do you think he was in a tough spot?
Well, I think anybody who is managing a team where the overriding feeling is, all right, we're probably not going to compete this year, and we may not compete next year, but we're going to try and start to rebuild. I think being the manager of a team like that is a challenge. I think that's a tough spot, because in a world and in a city and in a sport that is measured in wins and losses, you're going to be judged on wins and losses. And if you're already behind the eight ball in terms of knowing that perhaps you don't have the pieces right now that are going to be able to compete on a daily basis, and you're told that before the season, I think that's a difficult spot for any manager or coach to be in. So in that regard, yes, but let's be clear, he understood what he was taking over when he took over for Charlie Manuel, and he understood last season and this season what his job was and what he had to do on a daily basis. And, he said the reason he is stepping down is because the losses were getting to him. And he said, being the big league manager, I'm measured by wins and losses, and we're losing more than we're winning. And therefore, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm going to step out of the way so that this organization can move forward in a different direction. So, yeah, it was a tough spot, but I think anybody that would have been in that spot would be in an equally tough spot. And I think Pete Mackanin over the next, however long he is at the helm is in a tough spot, and certainly the guy that comes in to replace him will also be in a tough spot until they get things turned around.
Yeah, Gregg Murphy's with us, Comcast Sportsnet, part of the Phillies broadcast team tonight. They'll have the Phillies and the Nationals. Last one for you, Murph. Ryan Howard spoke, Cole Hamels, and it didn't seem like a lot of these guys, it's not like there was this whole thing of support, like, I can't believe this happened. It just seemed like another day at the office for some of these guys. Is that the profession? Is that the business? Are you surprised that there wasn't a lot of, hey, that was our guy, I can't believe? I mean, are you a little surprised at the reactions from some of the players?
Well, okay, so honestly, I did not hear any of those comments yet. I was not in the clubhouse immediately afterwards when reporters were talking to the players. But I will say this, in the world that is professional baseball, and I would imagine professional sports across the board, there almost has to be that feeling of, okay, so this has happened, now we have to go out tonight and do our jobs, and we have to go out and win. And so maybe we're 3 hours away from, or 2.5 hours away from a game tonight, and the players are going through their routines, and it came as a shock to them. So probably a lot of them haven't even had a chance to really absorb what it means going forward. So, I can't speak for the players in terms of how they're feeling about the whole thing. I know Pete Mackanin, who just spoke with reporters, said that he is still numb. He doesn't even know what happened and hasn't really had a chance to think about it, but he had to get a lineup together, and he had to talk to his players and talk to the media. And so, I think over the next couple of days, perhaps we'll know a little bit better how the players are feeling, and then we can gauge from there. But 45 minutes after learning the news, and really only about 10 minutes after hearing from Sandberg himself, he went in and addressed the team. Those are probably some pretty tough questions to answer about how you feel. So,
Gregg Murphy and the guys, I'm sure you probably have some meetings to get into to get ready to talk about this on your broadcast tonight, Murph. So we'll let you get on out of here, and we appreciate the time as always on this Friday. Getting ready for a weekend set. You get to see Scherzer tonight. See if he can go for history. Bad history if you're a Phillies fan, but history nonetheless. It was funny because
any easier from a baseball standpoint, that's for sure.
No, and I wanted to ask you about, you were there with Franco this weekend and just seeing the look on that kid's face as he, makes history up there. What a cool moment that must have been for him to do that in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, and I interviewed him after both wins, which is something we almost never do, is interview a player back-to-back games in a post-game interview setting. But there really was no other choice. I mean, he was the story in New York, and make no mistake, he was the story in New York, not just from a Philadelphia side of things, but he was the story in New York, period. And it was really cool to watch. And you and I have had this conversation before. If you know Maikel Franco, and we're still getting to know him, but he is a kid that is full of life and full of energy and full of excitement, and he was pretty darn excited about the way his weekend went. It wasn't ho hum, I'm a big league player and I'm going to do this kind of thing all the time. He understood how special it was, and that wasn't lost on him, which I think is great because it really humanizes, these guys sometimes. We forget that, he's a 23-year-old, 22-year-old guy that is, just going out and trying to make a name for himself in his profession. Well, he certainly did. He did a lot of work this weekend in the media capital of the world to get his name out there.
Yeah, and the cool story on Father's Day, too, of Adam Morgan. The Phillies had not got a starting pitcher to win in 23 straight, and a guy who's 0-6 in the minors wins a game in the majors to snap that streak. So a lot of good positive stories as well, but obviously today, tough stuff for Ryne Sandberg, an emotional Ryne Sandberg. Gregg Murphy and the Phillies broadcast team will have more on that on Comcast Sportsnet tonight. Murph, we always appreciate it, pal.
All right, Mike. Good to talk to you.